All right. Thank you so much, Bridget. Welcome, everyone. I'm Nick Beam, he, him. I'm the chair of the Department of English. I'm also the director of the Center for Scholarship and Teaching here at Elmhurst University. I want to welcome you all to this wonderful event coordinated by Sigma Tau Delta. I want to thank the officers of Sigma Tau Delta for doing the hard work of coordinating this event and also reaching out to our wonderful panelists. So all of our students can benefit from their experience. I also want to welcome our amazing alums, and I want to thank them for agreeing to share their experience and their expertise with all the participants, and really helping the institution out, and doing that kind of mentorship work that we talked about when they were all students here at Elmhurst University. It's some of you was Elmhurst College back then, so I want to thank them. And thank you all panelists for sharing your expertise and your experience. And I also want to mention too just how proud I am of our panelists, because they are using their expertise, their experience, their talents, and the skills to make people's lives better. And each and every day, I'm asked, like, Dr. Beam, what should we do in terms of trying to negotiate this kind of dystopian context in which we unfortunately find ourselves. And my first response is always to one, take care of yourself, give yourself grace, make sure that you and your family are safe, and then to take one step at a time, because in authoritarian regimes and societies that are oppressive, taking one step at a time is an act of resistance. And then do one act of kindness at a time, and that too is an act of resistance. And do once you do one act of kindness at a time, then try to participate in the larger community in somehow, writing an editorial for a newspaper, or attending a protest, or making your voice heard in another way, calling your representatives. But starting with the little things and making sure you're giving yourself grace and having patience with yourself, and that you are safe and your family is safe as well. But our panelists are going above and beyond and sharing their expertise and experience with larger communities, and they are uh, uh, in small and large ways. They are enacting the values of this institution, particularly social responsibility, in caring for their fellow citizens and caring for their fellow neighbors, loving their neighbors through the work that they're producing as part of their careers. And I just want to say thank you so much for doing that hard work daily, and from the department, and from me personally, I'm so proud of each and every one of you. So I think from this point, I pass it off to Tuba, I believe.
Thank you, Dr. Beam. My name is Fatima Mudahir. I am the current president of Sigma Tau Delta, and I am a secondary English education major. Gianna, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Gianna Saraceno. I am our vice president, and I am a double major in English and business.
Josephine, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, I'm Josephine. I am an international student. I'm a double major in English and philosophy.
Thank you, guys. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first panelist of the night, Afaf Amadullah. Afaf Amadullah is a third-year law student at the University of Illinois College of Law, interning at Carples, a legal aid nonprofit. She has also worked at with Chicago Coalition for the Homeless and the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, an Elmhurst University graduate in English and philosophy. Afaf has published research on racial discrimination and housing injustices. She's committed to providing legal services to underserved communities, focusing on social justice and advocacy. And now, Afaf, you have the floor. Can you please tell us a little bit about your work and motivation?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you guys for organizing this panel and asking me to speak. I'm happy to, I guess, see some familiar faces with the professors, but also see like all these new undergraduate students who are they're interested in doing this kind of work, interested in doing nonprofit work, interested in doing public sector related work. So for me, kind of the reason why I went to law school in the first place was I knew I wanted to do like what we generally um, call like public interest work. So that's anything related to like nonprofit work. It can also be like public sector work, so working for the government, etc. So that's kind of the reason why I wanted to go to law school in the first place. And I'm happy, I'm happy I was able to kind of find my way throughout law school, working with different legal aid organizations, working with some government agencies, and really just being able to explore kind of my passion towards public interest and public service work in the law. I think it's like I think, you know, like Professor Beam said, like it's definitely hard and it's becoming harder. Um, just like in our world, a lot of these nonprofits and legal aid organizations like help everyday people, helping indigent people. They're relying so much on like federal funding, federal grants, and those being pulled means like a lot of these legal aids are losing like big chunks of their practices. Um, like they're not able to hire people who are graduating in my class, etc. Um, but the organization I'm working at right now actually receives like private donor funding, so they haven't been impacted by like the pulling of federal grants, etc. But I think that's also important. I think that also highlights an important aspect of doing this work is you definitely need support from like private donors, corporations, and you need to be able to, I guess, like for me, because I'm more like emerging, right? I haven't really started my career yet, still in school, but I'll be graduating in May. So like as somebody who's emerging, coming as a like incoming young professional, it's important. Like if you're passionate about this, you have to build those connections. Like get that, like show up. I don't know, show up to the networking events. Make sure that donors who know who you are, like who's doing the work, and things like that. I don't know if that addressed your question, but
It does. Thank you so much.
Our next panelist is Sarah Astra. She's the Member Publications Associate at ASSP, working on the organization's flagship publication, Professional Safety Journal. She writes and edits articles on safety-related topics such as construction hazards, safety training, musculoskeletal disorders, workplace injuries and illnesses, incident investigations, and fall protection. She graduated from Elmhurst in 2016 with a BA in English. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I've been at ASSP, which, by the way, I should probably not use the acronym. It's the American Society of Safety Professionals, for a little bit more information. We are a global association for occupational safety and health professionals. We deal a lot with OSHA and NIOSH, which is under the CDC. Obviously, these are government organizations, and these have heavily been affected by administration changes, many different things in the last couple months, even. But specifically, the work that I do, well, the association in general, we've been around for more than 100 years, and we support occupational safety and health professionals in their efforts to prevent workplace injuries, illnesses, and fatalities. We're really about helping increase safety for workers, no matter who they are. We provide education, advocacy, standards development, and professional community to our members, as well as additional job and career advancement opportunities. And just the safety profession as a whole. We're really seen as experts, and we are a professional organization that many come to for whether it be academic articles. As I said, I am on the journal that is the flagship publication. I've been here for about 7 years now, and I see articles on topics of all anything you can think of in terms of safety. We've written about concerns with an aging workforce, what considerations you need to remember with workers who are aging. We've written about everyday construction hazards that people need to be aware of as well. So it's really, as I said, just about protecting workers at all levels, whether it be from just a construction worker who was just hired on to somebody who's been in the safety profession for 30 years. We're really just trying to give resources and provide connections to anybody in between. So we have more than 35,000 members. So it's a pretty big organization, and we try to provide information for all of them. Specifically, I write and edit for the journal. So I'm going through sometimes at least 10 to 20 articles a month. So it's quite a high volume sometimes, and I'm working on a small team. But yeah, so a lot of my motivation for working here, I didn't really intend to go into this industry, but I kind of just fell into it because I know I like editing, I know I like writing. That's what I went to school for. So I was really just kind of going for whatever I kind of vibed with, and I ended up really appreciating the mission of the society and their commitment to DEI and just trying to the mission in general really resonated with me. So that's why I've stayed on for so long. We actually recently just had a all staff meeting about specifically the changing administration and so many things changing in our world. And a lot of the things that were discussed there were just, we need to obviously roll with the punches, do what we can each step at a time, just like Dr. Bean said, and take a moment for ourselves as much as we can and still hold true to our values, ensuring that we're focusing on protecting ourselves and protecting others that we care about, as well as the betterment of everyone. So hopefully that helps.
Thank
Yeah,
you
that
so
was
much,
great.
Sarah.
Thank you.
Sorry, John.
No, you're good.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was awesome. And now I'd like to introduce you all to our third panelist of the night, Zachary Bishop. Zachary Bishop has nearly 10 years of experience working in public and nonprofit museums in the Chicago suburbs. He is currently on the registrar and museum manager of the Shingyoth, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Center of Aurora University, and has previously worked at the DuPage County Historical Museum and Downers Grove Museum. He earned his bachelor's in history and English from Elmhurst in 2015 and his master's in history with a public history concentration from Northern Illinois University in 2017. Now, Zachary, I'm going to pass you the mic. Can you tell us a bit about your work, career path, and motivation?
Yes, thank you so much. And you got it mostly correct. It's pronounced Shingothi. I really, throughout my professional career, I've worked largely in museums, mainly history museums, just because that's what my background is in. But more recently, the past 3 years, I've worked at the Shingothi Center at Aurora University, which is the museum kind of does a little bit of everything. We're very interdisciplinary, but we are primarily focused on artwork and kind of teaching students through art. I really love working at the museum that I'm at currently, mainly because of just the ability and kind of our mission as an academic museum is we're really focused on displaying art, exhibiting artwork that tells a story, that really connects with people, connects to social issues. It's not just like, this is pretty art that we're putting up. We're more putting up art that really helps us talk about complex topics. We do talk a lot about social justice issues, issues of identity. Our current exhibition that we have right now is actually a traveling exhibition about the history of Native American boarding schools and how very much the generational trauma that came from that experience with Native American families and over 100 years. Our exhibition coming up in about a month or so is about an artist named Tim Lowley, who creates artwork about his daughter who is profoundly disabled and is not well represented at all because she can't speak or move for herself. So kind of how do you represent that population that we don't see? And that those conversations are especially going to be pertinent with current issues of Medicaid and how people in that population can't live without Medicaid, can't get the resources that they need. And so yeah, and so really just kind of in reflecting on my entire career with history, I was always very focused on like, how do we tell a more expansive history than what the traditional narratives have been? How do we include groups that have traditionally been left out of history? How do we kind of help correct some of the myths that have been made in the past? And so that really for me is focused on kind of local issues outside of my work. I also have been researching in the past 5 years really intensely the history of the Underground Railroad and the enslaved African Americans who came through Kane and DuPage County, and then also the long history of housing discrimination in DuPage County, particularly that prevented non-white people from living in the county before the 1960s. Yeah, really kind of have all of that into my work and my practice. And it's really great to be in an organization that Aurora University, very much like Elmhurst, is very focused on inclusivity. Our student body we have a large population of first-gen students. Our student population is 45%, almost 50% Latino, Latina. So, and also being in the city of Aurora as well as Aurora is a minority majority city. So it is great to be in such a diverse environment, both at the university and in the city as well. And it's great to be able to interact with the community and kind of help just bring some great artwork that helps start some really good conversations with both the campus and broader community.
Thank you so much.
Our fourth panelist is Brittany Irish. She is the Communications and Marketing Manager for the COPD Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to helping millions of people with COPD, bronchitis, and NTM lung disease live longer, healthier lives. She has nearly 15 years of experience in communications, marketing, and public relations with a focus on nonprofit and healthcare. Her previous experience includes communication roles at George Mason University's College of Health and Human Services, the American Association for Radiation Oncology, the U.S. Army, the FBI, and as managing editor of West Suburban Living magazine. She also spent 7 years as a stay-at-home parent to her 2 daughters, now 8 and 6. Brittany earned her BA in English from Elmhurst University in 2005. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and your career.
Yeah, hi, welcome. I'm in Elmhurst College. Tony and I we're the senior citizens of the group, Tony. I earned my BA in English and also secondary education, even though none of my job history is in secondary education, but Tony and I went through that program together, so it's good to see you, Tony. I have a pretty diverse background from, as you can see from my little bio there. I started because I wanted to write, and I worked for the Leader all 4 years that I was at Elmhurst. I ran the Leader. I was editor-in-chief my junior year. So got the bug and worked at West Suburban Living for nearly 10 years, doing all things West Suburban, DuPage, Kane, all those great counties out there. And then my husband and I picked up and moved to Virginia. So now I'm in the Northern Virginia area, about an hour and a half from DC. So seeing the current climate, it hits home in a lot of ways for us out here right now. So while I've been in DC, I've worked pretty much everywhere else. I've been at the foundation for almost a full year now. I spent the previous 7 years home with my girls. So I am proof that you can leave the workforce and come back. It's a fun experience. But I really got bit by the nonprofit and healthcare bug. I spent some time at a government contractor, and that's where I got experience with the Army and the FBI doing strategic communications. And then even back then, 12 plus years ago, contracting was still a very unstable profession, and comms is always the first thing to get cut. Marketing and comms, like, we don't need that. We can figure that out on our own. And so needed something a little more stable. And so then got into nonprofits, and that's where I worked for the American Society for Radiation Oncology. So that's a member-based organization for radiation oncologists. So if you get radiation therapy as part of a cancer treatment, those doctors were part of that organization. I handled all of our communications there. And that's where I really got bit by this nonprofit serving the mission bug, and realizing that I was really good at healthcare communications and really good at scientific writing and translating scientific writing and journal publications for the press and for the general public. And so that kind of became my sweet spot. From there, I moved over to George Mason University, which is a large state school here in Virginia. Their College of Health and Human Services houses their School of Nursing, their Department of Rehabilitation Science, Global and Public Health, so all of those things. And again, was trying to recruit undergrad and graduate students, was also disseminating research that our faculty were doing. And then I stayed home for 7 years and did a lot of volunteer work. I'm always the person doing comms and PR and social media. And so I kept that up with a lot of the volunteer work I did while I stayed home with my girls. And then when I went to find a new job, I really struggled. And that was a year ago. And my husband and I were like, what do you really want to do? I'm like, I really enjoy healthcare communications, and I really enjoy the mission focused areas of a nonprofit. And so found a spot at the COPD Foundation. So COPD is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It affects nearly 16 million Americans in the United States, but it's estimated that another 16 million have it and don't know it yet. So it's it's the 6th leading cause of death in the United States. It's the 4th leading cause of death worldwide. So for us, a big push is for awareness. And so a lot of what we do is for people with the disease, for their caregivers, for their family members, for everyone that in their bubble that is impacted by this disease. It's not just the person with it that is impacted by chronic lung disease. And I handle all of our media relations. We have a communications team of 4, and all of us then work on separate projects. So we all have projects within there, but I do all of our media, all of our public outreach and things like that. And what's really the best part for me is the storytelling aspect. And I get to work with our amazing advocate base of patients and caregivers and respiratory therapists who want to help people who have COPD and advocate on their behalf. We have amazing patients who share their stories. And it's so moving to be able to share those stories with people and to tell people's stories and to let them connect with others who might be newly diagnosed, who might be struggling to get a diagnosis, who are scared, and connecting them with these folks that are willing to share their experience and not be ashamed of the fact that they have a chronic illness that does not have a cure. And it's really rewarding, and it really is a fill my cup type of situation. And that's what I have found in pretty much all nonprofit work. No matter what the topic is if you find something that you're passionate about and that fills your cup, it makes your job so easy. And it's so rewarding to be able to share those stories. We're actually getting ready on Monday to head to the district. So for me, it's not a big trip, but our company is fully remote. So for a lot of folks, they get to come to my neck of the woods, and we'll spend a day on Capitol Hill doing some advocating. It is a very loaded situation in the district right now. From a work standpoint, we're a combination funded by industry. So pharmaceutical companies, we are funded by private donors, but we are also funded by government grants. So NIH and the NHLBI, which is the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, we work with them very closely. We do some work with the CDC, all of these things. And it's been really interesting because we've had to decide how are we going to handle the things that we do, and how are we going to handle DE&I as an organization who feels pretty strongly about inclusion, and getting that message from our CEO. Our board is on board with the patient population is diverse, and how do you talk about the increased risk of women having COPD if you can't actually say that? And so that is something that we have really struggled with, and our CEO has been very good about guiding us to say our main purpose is to serve our patients. And we have to be careful about some of the things we do when we're applying for government grants and things like that. So we've had to make some adjustments as we move forward in some of those areas, but in the end, our purpose is our patients, and our patients fall along the entire spectrum of diversity, and we cannot forget that that is our mission. And that's kind of been our current path forward. It is, I can tell you, it changes on the daily how we're going to handle things, and are we going to talk about Women's Health Month coming up in May, or are we not? And we've had to make a lot of those decisions. Living in the DC area, I can tell you it's a trip right now. It's a lot of people are losing their jobs. A lot of people are very uncertain about the way things are going. And I think what a lot of us in this area have done, being personally impacted, my husband supports the government, my brother-in-law supports the government, is that you have to take a step back and kind of wait for things to figure themselves out a little bit, and not have a knee-jerk. Everyone wants to have a knee-jerk reaction, and what we're all trying to do, and the people that I know who are directly impacted, to say something has been stated, let's take a step back and like let the fallout happen a little bit before we make a knee-jerk decision. And the same thing's happening at work. Like you can say, okay, we need to scrub everything of all these DE&I terms, but maybe we don't. So maybe we need to just pause before we make any rash decisions and see how things kind of filter out. But it's definitely, it changes by the day. I can tell you that. Do you still advocate next week, and what is your messaging? And that has been an ever-changing situation over the past several weeks. So it's an interesting world we live in.
Thank you so much for that. That was very insightful.
And now I'd like to introduce everyone to our fifth panelist of the night, Tony Murata, who is a 2005 Elmhurst University graduate with a bachelor's in English and secondary education, and he now serves as our Director of Global Engagement. He also holds a master's degree in College Student Personnel Administration from Illinois State University. Tony leads internationalization efforts at Elmhurst, fostering a globally minded community. Outside of work, he's a comic book enthusiast and Funko Pop collector, often seen dressed as a superhero around campus. Now, Tony, I'm opening the floor to you. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your motivation, please?
Yes, thank you for that introduction. I am a comic book enthusiast. Sorry, I'm not in my office today. Otherwise, you can see all the Funko Pops. It does look like a comic book store in there. But yes, I'm Tony. Nice to meet you all, and nice to see you again, Brittany. Always nice to see fellow alum from around the same time. But yeah, my journey has been a little twisty turvy. I started off as a jazz major at a school I won't name. And then I came here, and before I did this, I also then went into computer science and accounting because people told me to make money. That was miserable for me. And then I came here, I did English and education, and it was wonderful. I didn't wind up doing education, but I did get my master's in student affairs, essentially, higher ed. Because when I was a student, I was an RA, resident assistant. I did other jobs. I worked in the writing center. When there was a writing center, I worked in the library. Oddly enough, my office is in the library now. It's weird to come back and have that. But that kind of fueled my passion for working with students, as well as when I was at Elmhurst. I got involved in the International Student Association, what it was back then. and I got to know the international students, and that really drove my passion for all things global and getting to know the world. And I think one of my main lessons from English was that there are so many texts in the world, not just books. Everything is a text if you read it, if you think about it. And the world to me is a text, like getting to know cultures, getting to know people, getting to know how to connect folks together and help us come together. Um, so after my master's, I worked in student affairs mostly for about 5 years in all sorts of offices, Res Life, leadership, diversity, equity, inclusion, organizations, Greek life, you name it, I probably did it. But I always had that background of international education in my brain, and I wanted to get back into that. And I was fortunate to do that, and I've been doing that for 16, 17 years now, through a variety of institutions. But I keep coming back to Elmhurst because I love Elmhurst. I came back here during COVID, in COVID days when there wasn't a lot going on except for remote learning. And I was in a mission then, and I did that intentionally because I had been doing international student services. But I want to see the other side. I want to see what it's like to bring students in and get that background so I could be a better practitioner for my students. And during that time, we had some changes with the International Education Department, and I put forth a plan. And at first, it was a different plan that I was Director of International Student Services and International Admission. So bringing students in and supporting them, which I'm very passionate about, I love to do. Josephine is a wonderful student of mine, so glad to see her here. And then eventually I was able to reboot international education into the Office for Global Engagement. So really professionalizing the office and thinking about how are we intentionally connecting ourselves to the world, connecting our Blue Jays, bringing students in, sending students out, and really helping people understand that you need to see the world, you need to get to know people to understand your place in it, and to be supportive and really not rip apart the world. We get to do a lot of really cool things. Not only do we provide a lot of the immigration support to our international students, but I created an engagement component within it so that we are actively sending students out in the city into the different neighborhoods and understanding what Chicago is as a text, essentially, and getting to know the neighborhoods. And we go to different cultural restaurants to be able, because the best way to get to know each other is to break bread. You learn a lot about culture through cuisine. You learn a lot about each other through breaking bread. And we do International Education Week, a lot of programs. When I started here, we had around 80 international students, with maybe 5 doing post-completion work with us. And now we're up to almost 400 international students and almost 80 international students that are doing post-completion work. So we serve almost 500 students. So it's been really cool to be a part of that journey. Those students are from 42 countries. And then study abroad was essentially kind of flatlined because of COVID. It was easy to bring students in still, but it was really hard to send students out. But we're back to pre-COVID numbers, which is really awesome in terms of where we're doing our faculty-led trips. So we're sending faculty and students abroad. We have different partnerships around the world, and we've really kind of restructured the way we handle those partnerships and how we advise our students on study abroad. I think Brittany is absolutely correct. You find something you're passionate about, and you do it, and you find that corner of the world, and my world corner is the world, and you do that. And I'm very passionate about really connecting people and really getting to know people and seeing what makes them them and how does where they're from and I think when you think about where someone's from, there's so many different components to that. You can say you're from a certain country, sure, but what part of the country, what neighborhood, what's your background, what different things make you up as a person, but what are your interests? Like, what are you looking to do with your life? What are you passionate about? And helping students not just know their regulations, but go abroad, but help them understand their place in the world and how who they are can contribute to that. So I'm happy to do that with Elmhurst, and I will say it's also very cool to come back and be in a room with some of my former instructors and now colleagues, and then be able to talk to students that are going out in the world. It's an honor and a privilege. So thank you for inviting me. Always happy to do this.
I really like that. Thank you so much, Tony.
And then last but not least, we have Shelly Ruzicka, a 2006 Elmhurst College graduate. She is the Communications and Finance Director at Arise Chicago, a nationally led interfaith workers' right organization. She has supported low-paid workers recover millions in stolen wages, and played a key role in passing significant labor legislation. Shelley excels in media outreach, highlighting issues like immigrant women in the Me Too movement and workplace COVID challenges. She has served on the board of Chicago Fair Trade and participated in prestigious leadership programs. Her passion for workers' rights stems from her family's immigrant background, her mother's career as a public school teacher, and a keen class analysis. If you would like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It was a delight to hear from the other alum who I don't actually know well, but feel like I have a connection to each of you based on either things from Elmhurst, like studying abroad, or your current positions. So would actually be interested in connecting with everyone after as well. Yeah, so as said, I graduated in 2006, and I actually started at Arise as an intern. And that was an internship recommended to me by an EC. I'm in Elmhurst College forever, so apologies. I know it is wrong, but I'm a EC forever. So a former staffer who recommended it to me, and I wasn't sure what I was doing after college. I thought I wanted to do a volunteer program abroad. Was really interested in big picture social justice, economic issues, international development, international poverty issues. And I was really grateful that this was kind of my backup to going abroad. I did this internship, and it has helped set me on my life's passion and my career. So one first piece of advice, just get involved on campus if there's something you care about. Find connections, get plugged into professors and other advisors, as well as things off campus. And a lot of things I did at Elmhurst were some really formative things, including some of my studies that got me really interested. Classes like the Search for Humane Values in Literature with Lance Wilcox at the time. What was it? The like religious education requirement class was also like a values-based class. Really kind of got me looking at what my values were and what I saw happening in the world, and realized I wanted to do something about it. I started out as an English major, loving a lot of books, and later decided I wanted to not teach those things. I started out secondary education also, thought I wanted to teach high school literature, and then decided I wanted to live out the things. My favorite book is still The Grapes of Wrath. I liked a lot of books I realized about social change and revolution, and thought, okay, actually, I want to live those things out. And thanks to some of my connections that I made at Elmhurst and internships I found, and relationships, landed me at Arise. And at the end of the summer of my internship, I was hired on as staff. I've had the most hats and different titles at the organization, but I haven't left, and that the work keeps changing. It stays interesting. I've been able to grow professionally as well. So Arise Chicago is a worker rights organization. We are nationally known as a local group, helping to set the bar for other cities to then push for state and national level legislation. We were founded back in 1991 by a group of clergy. Sounds like the start of a bad joke, but it was a Catholic Monsignor, a Methodist bishop, and a rabbi got together. And we started out organizing other clergy to support workers trying to unionize, or unionize workers trying to get their first contract. These are like the only family sustaining jobs you could have as a working class person. And the organization did that for about a decade. And then we said, well, what about the other, vast majority of workers who don't have unions and are working the lowest paid, least safe, most discrimination happening, basically the worst jobs that there are. So we wrote a workers' rights manual before my time in English, Spanish, and Polish, and distributed it out in the community. Those were the largest immigrant populations at the time. And of course, we're flooded with phone calls of people with questions. So we opened our worker center, where folks can now come to learn their rights. And instead of being a responsive model, we're more proactive now. Folks come to us, we have a requirement, you learn your rights at a workshop, you join as a member, and decide if you want to launch a workplace justice campaign. So that could be because your wages are being stolen, you're not being paid properly, there's discrimination, health and safety, retaliation for organizing, all of these things which are protected under the law and government agencies, which are obviously under attack right now. So we're concerned about that. And at the same time, we say we will not change our mission. We will not stop organizing with or without the government agencies. We're both going to fight to protect those agencies, but also organize workers to protect themselves on the job. And so our base are immigrant workers. So that's obviously also an extra vulnerable population right now. So we are working, how do we protect our organization, and how do we protect our members in this time? So we teach people what their rights are, how they can take action, how to organize, demand wages be recovered, as well as to increase their wages. So we've recovered as an organization since we opened the Workers Center in 2002, over $10 million for workers in wages and compensation. And just in the past few years, we've started organizing workers to demand above the minimum and demand increases to wages, and have supported workers to recover at least $4 million, or not recover, gain at least $4 million collectively in new wages. But we don't stop there. We do leadership development with workers so that they can, as part of their campaigns, make those demands, speak to the public, speak to the press. That's where part of my job comes in, talk to their elected officials, to keep making these demands and become leaders on the job, in their neighborhoods, in their communities, which is extra important right now, as there is so much fear in the community. Another big part of my role right now is how we're combating this fear narrative. It's not that there isn't fear in the community, but when all workers see in the press is about how people are scared and staying home, that contributes to the fear. So we're talking to our members about how they actually feel, how they feel more emboldened and they feel a lot safer after going to an immigration know your rights training, and how they are now taking that information out to their communities and communicating those really important rights you have on the job, what materials you can have, what you need to do to say, I might be concerned, but I'm not scared. I have to live my life. I have to go to work. And then we also organize workers and the faith community to pass pro-worker policies. So things like Chicago and Cook County paid sick days, at the state level, the Domestic Worker Bill of Rights, as well as some federal advocacy, and others as well. So I could talk forever, as you can see, about our work. As many have said, if you find something you care about, it fills you up, it fills your cup, and it makes, as someone once told me, instead of saying, I have to do this for work, I get to do this for work, and to remember that my job is very much a privilege. And I'm honored to work with our workers. So I've worn some different hats, but right now I'll focus mostly kind of on my communications work. I do also support our development team in grant writing and reporting and editing for raising money. And in our communications work, I interact with our members. I do spokespersons training to let workers know, saying your story is so rich and so complex, and you could write a book and you could speak all day. But sadly, at that press conference, you're going to have 30 seconds to 2 minutes, right? So how do you share something so complex and often painful, as well as showing your determination in a short amount of time? And how do we do that in a way that feels empowering to you, and that you own your story and you own your narrative? So that's one of my favorite parts of my job, is supporting and training those workers, and then also writing punchy media advisories to get the press to show up. That's my job, to make sure the press is covering our stories, whether it's a workplace campaign or a policy campaign, or right now, as again, we're pushing back against the fear narrative, and also defending our immigrant worker members right now. I could go on. I'll maybe just pause there, and just to reiterate, if there's an issue you care about at all, get involved now, whether it's on campus or in the community. And you obviously have a bunch of amazing people here that we're happy to, through ourselves or through, professors here, to get you plugged in, whether it's to our organization or others. For myself, whether it's, someplace like Arise or something else in the city, would be happy to connect folks.
Thank you so much for that. That was wonderful.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I think I'm speaking on behalf of everyone here when I say all of you are incredibly inspiring, and I hope you continue to inspire people and do wonderful things for the world. Now, I have a couple more questions for our panelists, and any one of you can answer these. So I first want to ask, what did you learn as an English major that you use in your nonprofit work?
I can start off with this one if you'd like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so as an English major, I also was editor-in-chief of The Leader right after Zach Bishop. So as during my time there, and also learning from Dr. Wigginton, I learned to write in a non-biased way, but still convey information. especially as Brittany said, we're in a changing time, and it's sometimes best to just take a step back and observe and write and continue to show in a non-biased way, and then evaluate and work towards, okay, here's what I want in my writing, here's what I want to convey. Let's not react immediately. And obviously, this is different for everybody, but just in my line of work, not reacting immediately and thinking through a strategic response that not only that helps as many individuals as possible. That is one of the things that I definitely learned at Elmhurst, and I use every single day, especially because information is coming from so many different uh, media and from so many different viewpoints, and to try to pick out the bits that are at the heart of the truth and disseminate all of that, and then be able to report back in a way that is as unbiased as possible. And obviously, I know that's not always possible. We always have our own inherent biases, but just trying to convey as much information as possible in an unbiased way. That's what I'm so thankful that I learned.
I talked a little bit about the idea of text and analyzing, but I think English taught me a lot about critical thinking and about theory and applying that. And you might not apply the exact theory, but the fact that you're thinking about theory and you're analyzing through different lenses is really important, because it will help you when you're in the world think about the different backgrounds and different ways you can analyze a situation, which I think is wonderful. Communication as well, I think not just written, but verbal when we're doing presentations and such is really important. But outside of what was a direct lesson, one of the coolest and most reflective things a faculty member told me, Dr. Chambers, was, Tony, you don't always have to answer. You don't always have to be the one talking. And because I pride myself on my knowledge, I pride myself on my abilities. But that was a really important lesson for me from a faculty member that I really respect, to think about sitting back and letting others talk, letting others tell their story, letting others answer, giving space, giving that room to other people, especially coming from a point of privilege as well, and it's really important. And I think about the ways that has helped me in working in school, working with students, letting students talk, letting other colleagues talk. And in the last few years, in fact, I had a debate with someone on campus who said, power is taken. And I said, absolutely not. Power should be given if you can, or power should be shared. And that to me harkens back to the idea of you have to sit back, but you also have to give people that power in that space. So I get to do that every day in my work. I get to, especially now, support other offices, support students, and give them a voice, give them a platform, give them our support, and let them do that. And I think that's really important. So in classroom, but out of classroom learning as well.
I would say mine is also going to be connected to my journalism experience. I knew I wanted to do journalism when I came to Elmhurst. So the program and the reputation of the leader at the time was part of the reason that I chose Elmhurst. But I started at West Suburban Living as an intern. So I had a similar story to Shelley in that I started as an intern. Dr. Ron got me that internship because he knew the editor of the magazine. And then I stayed there for 10 years. And the only reason that I left was because we literally picked up and relocated. But Ron told me, anybody who took a journalism class with Ron or worked on the leader knew that he was a stickler for facts and accuracy. And that has proved me very beneficial, especially writing journal research and ensuring that you're disseminating data correctly. But the one thing that has always stuck with me that he told me was to never open a door for a reader that you cannot close. And what that does is makes you more inquisitive, and it makes you as a writer a better person in looking at what questions do I need to answer for the person that is reading whatever I'm putting out. Even if it's a social media post, if it's a press release, if it's a newsletter, if it's a letter, if it's any kind of correspondence, I've mentored a lot of students in my time as an alum. That's what happens when you graduated 20 years ago. And I think what I always remind people too from that is to ask those questions so that when you put out a communication, all of that person's potential questions that they didn't even know they had were answered. And you get really good about thinking how other people might interpret information, because you want to make sure you answer those questions for them in your communication. And what I like to remind English majors that I have mentored is that communicators are so valuable. They're so valuable. There is a communications specialist, person, manager, something, freelancer, contractor in every organization. They always need someone to be able to disseminate their message, whether it's internal comms within your organization, whether it's external, whether it's with the media, whether it's not. Everybody needs that support. And I think what happens a lot of times with English majors is we get there and, you know, I was English lit major. I wasn't an English writing major because I went through secondary ed, and we don't know what to do. You think you have to teach it, or, you know, you have to like fall into this, well, I have to go be an editor, I have to be a writer. And it's so much broader than that. I do a lot of work with our development team as well, you know, so everybody needs, and the way I write for development is very different than the way I write for media, and it's very different than the way I write for my patients, and it's very different than the way we write for the healthcare providers that we service. And so being able to write for those different audiences and take those experiences and do that, it is really valuable. And I think it's something that a lot of English majors tend to discredit themselves, that they have that ability to be this chameleon and write for different audiences. Outside of the classroom, Elmhurst taught me how to manage all the balls in the air. Because I think one of the benefits of going to a smaller school is that you can do so many different things at the same time. You know, you can be a Greek. I was also president of Sigma Tau Delta. You can be editor of the Leader, but you can also be, you know, involved in all these different aspects that help you grow as a person. And I think you have to take advantage of that, of the experience that being in the close-knit community that Elmhurst is, and the exposure that you don't have to pigeonhole yourself. It's not, I work for the paper and that's it, or I'm part of Greek life and that's it. You can do all of those things and they all enrich your experience. And in the end, when you turn around and you apply those lessons later in life that you didn't even know you were learning at the time. So being able to time manage and keep all the balls in the air and foster interest in different areas, I think is something that was really valuable during my experience.
Thank you. And Shelley, I saw your hands up.
Oh, really briefly, I was going to answer in a super non-traditional way of one of the reasons I went to Elmhurst was for the study abroad programs. And coming in as an English major, the Oxford program really wanted to do it, which I did and got to do my sophomore year, thanks to Lance Wilcox pushing to do that. And I got what I thought I wanted, which was like a super hardcore, rigorous academic experience, like butt kicking, like really, really hard. But the unexpected thing that I got out that was actually more important to like my future career in life was the student activism that I participated in with Fair Trade and Amnesty International, and seeing students come together to make demands in a way I had not seen before. And that was one of my big takeaways. So study abroad, like get involved with things, and you might learn lessons outside that your major offers you, but that you might not expect that might be important.
Thank you. And Afafa, I see you also have your hand up.
Yeah, so at the risk of repeating what other people have said, you know, I think maybe I can bring a little different perspective into this because, like, when writing, legal writing is so different, writing in law school is so different, but I think, you know, you don't have room to be creative as much. You know, as an undergrad, you're like, I'm having so much fun, like expressing myself. It's not like that. Legal writing is not like that. But I do have to say, just having to sit there for every class and write just anything when after you read it, and be critical in your writing. And that process of making sure that you actually understood what was being said was so important to me. And I think it's so important to be a lawyer as well, to be able to critically digest what you're reading and be able to, tell somebody else based off of that, like, this is what you should do, etc. So I think just having that experience as an English major, constantly having to show somebody, not only do I understand, this is not just like a multiple choice exam, right? Not only do I understand it in terms of like 1 + 1 = 2, but I can write about what I took away from this. I can write about how it relates to me, how it relates to the world. Um, like that is so important. I think that skill is so underestimated, even if undergrad writing was so creative versus like now it's much more mechanical for me. It's those skills I think are, I think unfortunately our society just underestimates those skills. But you can't be a lawyer without those skills, for example. There's other things you can't do without those skills. So what you have in your toolbox is very important. And as an undergrad, maybe I didn't realize that, right? But now I realize that, like finishing up law school, I realize how much those skills helped me throughout my time in law school, how they're going to continue to help me in my career.
I'm sorry. Wait, I have notification. You just swipe. Okay, so I have one more question for you guys. And thank you, by the way, that was really helpful. And I agree that like people really underestimate English majors and their skills. I was curious, how do social and political divisions influence your organization's ability to fulfill their missions?
Yeah, I would say for me, and working in museums, prior to working where I'm at now, I worked for the DuPage County Historical Museum, which is run by a public entity. And we ran into a lot of issues, especially during COVID and kind of the racial unrest in the wake of George Floyd. We just ran into so many issues where we kept being told by our managers, our supervisors who were more higher up government officials, and just getting kind of pushback saying like, oh, you can't do that. You're going to be too political. You're going to stir the pot too much. We're a government. We have to be nonpartisan. We have to be neutral. And just kind of like struggling to like, how do you walk that line of like, how do you, like, what does neutrality even mean? And like, does that mean not sharing the facts as they are? So it just really, influenced a lot of how we had to kind of like present some of our content in exhibits, in kind of our collecting schemes and things like that. And even at the museum, even at the museum I work at now, which is a nonprofit, just kind of dealing with community members who have very differing opinions than what you're saying. Like, why do you need to focus on social justice issues? Why do we need to talk about identity? Why can't you just talk about art that's pretty? So yeah, really just in my work, it impacts it so much.
Yeah, echoing that too. We also are the society also had a lot of struggle at the beginning of 2020 with COVID and also the George Floyd incident, and it was there was less pushback because we aren't directly related to the government, but it felt like it was as soon as everything started going and as soon as we kind of got with the message, which obviously it can take companies quite some uh, additional time to, get with the program and like start being active. We started creating, we created a DEI task force, both in staff and through volunteer members. We have a DEI audit tool that safety professionals and even companies, employers can download to kind of assess their DEI in their organization and communicating culture, values, philosophy, and incorporate a DEI lens in their organization as well. And obviously, it took some time for all of these things to come out, and a lot of it is trying to pull from different voices from our membership as well. So we have different member communities, such as our Blacks in Safety Excellence group, Hispanics in Safety Excellence group. We have a women's group as well, and we have some broken up by profession too, so different industries. But trying to pull from different areas to try to get as many voices as possible, and that's especially something that we use throughout the journal too. So we have a smaller little section just about our members and their stories, just in general. So that's something that I focus on specifically, trying to find members who are not necessarily the loudest, but who have differing stories and they come from different places and they provide different perspectives. So just trying to get as many voices as possible in a world where it seems like everybody's trying to shush others, you know? So
Can I be frank about Elmhurst? So okay, so I'm not satisfied with the way our administration in the school has responded to everything happening, and I think a lot of students are not as well. I know a lot of students aren't. I think right now at Elmhurst we have a good amount of students that are uninformed and perhaps pleasantly so, coming from different points, maybe points of privilege, maybe not. And then we have students that are terrified, that are scared, that are worried every day coming to school. Um, and I think there's a lot of restraint coming from the administration in terms of what's happening. So we were trying to do things like become a sanctuary campus, which is not happening. But we also didn't have a plan for what if ICE comes to campus, what if other organizations come to campus. So I pulled that and I provided to the campus community to be reviewed and be Elmhurstified. So that's kind of stuff that we're I think up against, and I think the feeling from some folks on campuses, students aren't talking, so it must be okay. But really, students don't feel like they have that safety or that space to be able to talk at this point, just because there's so much stuff going on in the government and things are so uncertain. So I certainly it impacts my populations, it impacts international students coming in and visa issuance and processing, and the international students are worried about travel. So we are communicating about travel. We're communicating and saying we've got this and providing information as we have to and need to and what's coming up. Study abroad as well. How are people viewing the US? How is that going to impact when students go abroad? But past that, really looking at how I can advocate for the populations on campus and push us to where we need to be. And just keep pushing for the students to feel safe to have that voice and be able to provide that support. I'm in every meeting I can be for my field, but for Elmhurst and trying to hear students and be able to communicate, no, this is what's really going on. And really provide that voice and the advocacy, which is really important because that is really part of who Elmhurst is. We're social justice. We are UCC. We are supposed to be doing all these things. And past that too, I'm the Vice President of International Educators of Illinois. It's our kind of Illinois Group for International Education. I've become the president in a month, and then I will become the Illinois chair for the national organization of international educators, and I'm doing Advocacy Day. So I'm going to Washington, D.C. in April to advocate for international education. We get training on that. I thought that was super important to do now and more than ever before, and then bring the stuff back to campus and see what we can do. And I plan to advocate for other things while I'm there. I'm not going to let that time only be one thing. I am using my privilege to be able to be there, to be able to advocate for everything that needs to be advocated for. And I think we need more of that. We need people that are willing to do whatever they can from whatever perspective they can to really put themselves out there for the communities that really need that support and that voice in that space. And that's what I'm trying to do here. So thank you all our colleagues for let me say that. I appreciate that. But I think it's important to put out there. I think it's important to be honest.
I agree. Thank you, Tony. Afaf, would you like to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of nonprofits are generally, going to be impacted during a time like this. But I think one thing that's for sure is I don't like when the first thing I thought is like, what about lies in political, right? And I think one thing that we've all just noticed because this is the like I'm working at this organization in my capacity as an intern, but I've also worked with other organizations as an intern and just been involved with different nonprofits. Is there is unfortunately like a reversal in commitment to DEI, to pro bono, etc., from like large firms and things like that. So I think those type of things, like, they're impacting, other than what I said, I think earlier about a lot of these organizations rely on federal funding, but you rely, like, our organization entirely depends on private funding. So seeing that happen where firms are like, going back on DI, things like that, it's scary because it's like they're the ones who should be providing money to these legal or aid organizations. So we can help indigenous yeah, sorry. Okay, it said something about my connection. You can't hear me?
We can hear you. It's okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, like, you can't really help indigent clients. These firms aren't helping. They're helping people who pay the most, right? They're helping the banks, they're helping the giant corporations. So if we don't have like that money coming, it is scary to think about like what's gonna happen. The other thing is like I think it's siloing a lot of people, especially with the federal hiring freeze. Like, a lot of law students, like my class, we can't work in federal government, to out of law school because offers have been rescinded, etc. I think I'm grateful because I didn't silo myself, so I kind of was like, I'll do anything. So I'm going to be in local government after I graduate. But like, in terms of that, like, it just limits your options. It feels like, you know, there's just a lot happening that you can't control. So I think my point is, like, throughout all of this is to kind of just like remember your place. You might feel like, there's so much going on. There's all of these forces working against you, working against your goals, working against the organizations that you're passionate about. But I think one thing I really realized is like you need to be the advocate yourself, and I think a lot of the panelists have been saying things like, or have been echoing this sentiment of like being the advocate, using your education, using your knowledge for being the advocate. And that's something, I think that just really resonates with me. And just everything that's happened, I think even in the past few years, has really just furthered my commitment. And like, just, I feel like I'm doing the right thing, in what I'm pursuing.
Thank you so much. These are really scary times you're living in, but we need to remain hopeful. We need to like keep fighting. Thank you so much, guys. Now for our final 20 something minutes, I would like to open the floor to the audience and the officers for Q&A with our panelists. Also, panelists, you can ask each other questions as well. Just raise your hands in the chat, or like unmute yourself, however you want.
I think in the comments, Shelly was saying that she had something that she could contribute about the policies and practices for ICE on campus. And I was just kind of curious on what you had to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't been following like what's been happening on campus. I've been very wrapped up kind of in our world and a lot happening for immigrants in Chicago. But happy to talk now or off this call. I did put a link in the chat of some resources that we have that are free. Please distribute. We have them in English and Spanish on the site there. You can scroll down, you can find it in Spanish. There's a toolkit. A lot of groups have resources, so utilize anyone's. Ours is particularly for immigrant workers, so it has some extra things about workplace that aren't in some other toolkits. For Know Your Rights education, I would, encourage everyone to attend one of these types of trainings, whether it's us or something more local, to learn yourself, whether you're an immigrant or not, as an ally, what folks can do, even the most basic things of just telling people. We say some of the most important things. If you're at home, don't open the door. Wherever you are, don't open your mouth. Like, those are some that, and don't sign anything of the things not to do. We have in the materials, there are signs people can put on the outside of their door saying ICE is not allowed to enter without a warrant signed by a judge. because there are papers that look like a warrant, but if it's not an actual warrant and not signed by a judge, you do not have to open the door. We have a sign you can put inside your house to remind you, because in the moment, if something's happening and it's scary, saying you don't have to open the door, or if they say they have a warrant, you have the right to see it before allowing them to enter. We have a rights card you can hold in your wallet in English and Spanish, both again to remind yourself of what to do or not do, as well as to hand to ICE or police saying, I'm upholding my right to remain silent. So there's tools. I'm sure there's some other local groups out in your community that I would just, if folks have time or interest, I really encourage folks. And I'm seeing Tony's posting something by El Centro. That's great. A Know Your Rights workshop. Please attend those. For folks who do speak Spanish, we have, I think it was last night. Our most recent one was last night, a virtual one. We do most of our trainings in person. We do some virtual trainings. Primarily in Spanish. We're also doing like some train the trainer in either Spanish or English, so other folks can learn how to give these trainings. But yeah, connecting with El Centro is great. So also just, it's very concerning to me to hear if, there was a proposal to be a sanctuary campus that was turned down. That feels like it violates everything that I believe in and that I learned at Elmhurst and the type of, institution I thought it was. I know there's been some, I'm saying just personally now, some issues with the administration over the years, including around professors and organizing. And so I won't get into all of that, but just a lot of us have a lot on our plates in these times, but also please feel free to, I'll at least speak for myself, to call on to me or my organization for at least some minimal support of sending materials, happy to have a phone call, whether that's folks knowing for students themselves on how to feel protected, as well as, I don't know if it's passed, but if there's still more advocacy to do with the college administration, I'd be happy to support that. And I don't know if all of us, I would call on everyone here to tap into your networks to do that, because what type of place do we want to be and what messages the institution's sending out says a lot and is very important. For students, most importantly, if people don't feel safe on campus, that is unacceptable. And so that's like really important that the college should be sending that message, but as well as just who are you projecting out to the world? And are you at a time, we're talking about this with funders, and some funders are standing up, and what institutions are going to do the right thing and make the right call and project out the right message, and who's going to cower in times of crisis and times of need? And is Elmhurst going to choose to be a cowering institution or a brave institution standing up for not only its students, but its principals? So sorry to be on my soapbox a little bit, but this is very discouraging to hear that, Tony, and would love to support if I can. So we'll end there, but just again, encourage people to learn your rights for yourself, for others, get information. Take care of yourself, and then please, if you're able, try and do things to take care of others, and whether that's advocacy on campus, coming to rallies. We're mobilizing mostly for May Day. There's lots of calls out, and we're saying we can't be distracted by everything this White House says. We can't be also going to every single protest, but May Day will be a big mobilization if folks want to join. And to just get involved with movement people right now. It's really needed, and there's an attempt to exhaust all of us, right? To exhaust us with the chaos and the craziness, and we have to stay focused and we have to support each other. So I'll pause there.
And I will add too, thank you. There is a Know Your Rights link in there to sign up for students, faculty and staff on the call. We're doing one there for faculty and staff as well. And so you can stop by any of the offices identified, and probably others, to get those cards. I have a lot of flyers in my office about knowing your rights and what to do if ICE is here. And the sanctuary campus issue is why I said we at least need that ICE plan, because the worry was people would come on campus and just be handed everything, rather than knowing you do not comply with ICE or with other federal organizations unless they have certain very clear documentation. Otherwise, you tell them to go away, and really putting that forward. So if there's any, for the students on the call, please feel free to reach out. There are certainly plenty of faculty and staff that are on this and fighting for this and doing everything we can. And Shelley, thank you for reaching out. Direct message. We're going to connect, talk, because Shelley will be a great resource for the campus. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Shelly and Tony. These are really important things to know right now. Does anyone else have any questions for our panelists?
I guess I have a a question for the panelists. I imagine that being a student, you know, I mean, I so much admire the courage and the work that you're doing. And yet I also think that students may see that as something that, you know, if you're scared, how do you, you know, find that courage? And I was wondering, I mean, what experiences for you were the experiences that enabled you to find the courage to do the work you do? I think Bob, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I would say just for me, it's like the clients that I work with. So a lot of these people are like either uh, just in very difficult situations. It's like what you think of, when you think of uh, like generally who legal aid services. And I work with like a wide array of clients. And the other thing is like just doing pro bono work with people who are in situations like different situations, like um, one of the things that I've been working on with some human rights attorneys, I think recently just really motivated me, right? It's not, I think the thing with doing like nonprofit law, public interest law, working with these kind of people, working with people who don't have anybody else to help them. And trust me, like the thing is when you realize these people come to you as literally like last resort, right? So you have to realize um, like just, it's like everything else going on in their lives. They're not going to be able to separate it when they come to you. But also, the way that you treat them, the way that you deal with them is important because they wouldn't be talking to you if they had another option or if they weren't in this situation. But I think one of the cases that I worked on really recently, I'm still working on it, is human rights case that um, it's for somebody who's a federal prisoner right now, and she's just dealing with a lot, and we're just trying to make sure she has some types of protection in prison, some types of, we want to hold people accountable for violating her rights in prison, her constitutional rights, and I think just like really being hands on. I think somebody said this before. If you're interested in something, then do it. Don't, it's one thing to just like hear about it or talk about it. But if you're interested in it, go seek those opportunities. And somebody mentioned like even as an undergrad, like interning, things like that. I think that's always been so important for me. It's like, for me, is just you might be scared, but you're still very privileged when it comes to so many other people. Like in proximity to so many communities, and dare I say most people in this country, in the world. So if you're actually interacting with them and you're actually like working with them, I think it does make such a big difference to get outside of your own head, if it makes sense, and also realize um, like you're in a position to help people, right? So like you should. I mean, I think if you have the tools, if you have the capacity, if you're able to, you should be doing that with your time. And I respect everybody on this panel a lot for doing that as well.
If I can chime in, I have to take my son to basketball, so I apologize. But I think a lot of what I've said is true. Like you look for what you can do, you look for what you're passionate about. I think for me, it's looking at opportunities, looking at what needs to be done, and having the courage to face it and do it. When I was in mission, there was a lot going on in the world. So I created a scholarship that is a full ride for international students from very problematic things in the world. So students from refugee camps, students from countries at war. So I saw a need, and I wanted to push that forward, and I did. But I think too, like just looking at what's happening on campus and seeing students and really being open and listening, and then being open to reaching out and having that courage to help. And on the other side, if you're a student on the call, look for those people. I think Mr. Rogers said at one point, look for the helpers. Look for the people who are showing up to those meeting spaces. Those are the people that will amplify your voice and help you and carry you up and lift you up to have that voice. Because it can be hard, and it can be hard to know who your advocates are and who your allies are. But if you're looking for them, they're there, and we are always happy to be there and to help you do that. So thank you, and I'm gonna run to basketball. So I appreciate you and hope you all have a great night.
I think it's also important to remember that we're just all humans, And so while our organization is not dealing with a lot of the things that some of my other panelists are, I think at the same time, it's a respect for other people, and it's the motivation that we can give a voice to the people that might not have one, or that don't have the courage to speak for themselves. And what we try to do a lot in the foundation, and I've done this in a lot of my work, just not specifically with the COPD Foundation, but is to use people first language. So the people that we work with, they're not patients. They're not patients. They're not so-and-so who is battling chronic lung disease. They're a person. And so they're a person who is living with COPD. And I think you see that in a lot of different fields. You see that in special education. They are a person who has autism. They are a person who has this or that disability or whatever it may be, this illness. They are a person of color, but they're still a person. And I think what we have been able to do, and what a lot of us have been able to do, is to give people that support, and that we see you as a human, as a fellow human, and as a person. And so we're going to support you and help spread your voice and help give you your voice to make everyone else understand that we are really just all the same people, and that we all deserve the same rights and the same respect and the things like that. So while mine is on a different scale than some of the other things that we've been talking about, which are extremely, extremely important, I think that is a common thread in a lot of nonprofits' missions, is giving respect to people as fellow human beings, and being that voice for people. Because even with a chronic illness, we have a lot of patients, they don't want to tell their story. One of my colleagues, her father has both COPD and bronchiectasis, so he has two chronic lung diseases, and he doesn't want to tell people. He's scared that people will judge him. He's scared. A lot of chronic illnesses are invisible. But we also have people who are on supplemental oxygen, and there's a stereotype for that. A lot of people who have chronic lung disease were former smokers or current smokers, and there's the stigma that you brought this on yourself. And so we try to combat that, and we try to say, you are still a person, you are still deserving of an improved quality of life. And so I think that is a common thread for all of us, to empower people in that way.
Just following a little bit on what Afaf said, I think it's like also recognizing, like, at least in talking about our members right now, like similar, like I'm a college educated white lady, like I have a whole lot of privilege and I have a whole lot less to lose in a lot of ways than our members do. So like if they're brave and standing up and taking action, like I sure as hell can. And like these are workers who are risking like their livelihoods, like they know that they could get fired for organizing, like, it's against the law, but it happens. And people like women standing up and publicly talking about sexual harassment, like this is really hard stuff. Like going up against your boss is really freaking hard, right? Like not knowing if you lose your job, can you support your kids when you're getting paid a low wage anyway? Like people willing to do that. And this is not in a way to be like, oh, poor me, or be like preachy or anything, but it really is the reality. And not everyone can say that, but for me, it is true. And like our members are badasses, like they're inspiring, and there's a mix of people, right? People often come in scared, and some people don't take action. And there are some loud, boisterous leaders who are very obvious leaders. There are quiet leaders who are talking to their coworkers and convincing people to lose their fear, that aren't in front of the cameras. But these are folks that, have a lot at risk. And like that's why like I do the work I do, right? Like I think there's also, for some of us, there's something just in you that there is no other option, right? Especially in times like these when there are forces, and not everyone can do that. People have different thresholds of what they can do. People have different risks. Not everyone can take the same risks, and being very sensitive and very realistic about that. But for some of us who there's something just inside of you, maybe some of you feel this too, and in moments like these, saying there are things that are wrong in the world, and I feel called, I feel pulled to do something about it. And that might come in different forms, big or small. But yeah, so for those of us who can, sorry, I'm just like getting caught up in the chat too. Yeah, so again, people have different levels of risk, but if you can do one, yeah, it's big or small way, like stand up, get involved in some way. And for some of those, it's just in our blood. And it's hard not to do something. Oh, amen, Afaf. I'll start when I was at Elmhurst, I thought people just like didn't know about all the poverty and horrible things in the world. And if they only knew, they would care. And I learned very quickly that not everybody cares. And so that's kind of an organizing too, right? Or it's like knowing who's your audience, kind of the question too about like political division. You're not going to be able to move everybody. Not everyone's going to care about your issue, and that's okay. I wish it wasn't the case, but that's the world we live in. How do you speak to your base, the people who care a lot? How do you speak to the people who care a little? How do you maybe move the people in the middle? Are there some folks who aren't sure about what's happening with say, immigration right now, not sure what to think? Can you share a story with them and pull them over to get on your side? And maybe they're not rallying in the streets, but they at least, stop using horrible, like racist language, or they are starting to teach their kids better things. And so it's focusing on that and saying there's no point in talking to the opposition. Like, we're not going to go on Fox News, right? There's no point. We can't win there, but we can win some hearts and minds, and we can change people, maybe talking to the Tribune, to national CBS or to local Telemundo, etc. Right? So it's kind of knowing who your audience is and digging in there and doing that work and pulling people along. And I'm actually gonna have to run soon too. When this is over, but that was my last soapbox. But thanks. I would love to connect with folks. So much good overlap right now with everybody here.
Thank you all so much. This was such an inspiring conversation, and both the challenges and the opportunities for change. I'm thinking of what Dr. Crystal Laura at Chicago State University, her kind of motto is working toward justice with love and with joy. And it seems like I'm hearing a lot that, it's the people that you work with that bring joy, and that you love and want to support and work with, and not just for. So that is so inspiring. I encourage others to get involved with Arise Chicago. It's a fantastic organization. I want to just a quick shout out to Jose Benitez, who's on the call, and other students. I don't know if Caitlin is here, but Jose is a member of Sigma Tau Delta, and they were part of a group last semester that wrote a successful grant on to support Chicago Survivors, which is a group that does really essential healing work for survivors of gun violence in the city of Chicago. And it's so important and so meaningful. And thank you for sharing your love and joy in this work. And I wish you success in all your endeavors. And thank you to the officers. Tuva, do you want to say any final words?
Just thank you so much to the panelists. I feel like you inspired everyone else, but you also inspired me. Because like sometimes in this political climate, it feels like it's so hard to find people who truly care about what's going on and won't turn a blind eye. I know that sounds negative, but it's the truth. So like this meeting just kind of filled me with hope. And thank you so much, guys. Continue doing wonderful things. Continue changing the world. You're an inspiration to so many people.
Thank you, everyone. Have a really good evening.
Good night.